Never, ever forget this. But make sure you forget this.
The fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull. And then we watched the building. From here, we watched the building collapse.
Also, make sure you forget this too.
It might have appeared that way, but from my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual site of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon.
At this point, the internet is making it very hard for those that mean to rule us, to bamboozle us as easily as they once did. This is why we are now witnessing an unprecedented amount of censorship and the pushing of misinformation. While approved gatekeepers that may spout some criticism of the overall system but offer very little in the way of heretical thought or wrongthink, are tolerated and in some cases promoted as token counterculture figures, those that speak uncomfortable truths or have unorthodox thoughts are branded as having wrongthink and are being silenced and deplatformed at an ever-increasing speed. Wrongthink at this point is to question the established narrative. Wrongthink is to distrust corporate-controlled mainstream media. Wrongthink is not to accept the ever-changing parameters of the enforced and illegitimate cultural consensus. Wrongthink is not to blindly regurgitate and repeat vapid talking points on complex geopolitical issues. Wrongthink is to believe that men and women are different. Wrongthink is to question the social consequences of political decisions. Wrongthink is to even try to understand the layers of the system that control the society as a whole, and in the end, your life. Anything considered wrongthink is now painted with the brush of conspiracy theory, and any cultural heretic that verbalizes wrongthink as a conspiracy theorist. Given the recent debacle with regards to the suicide of disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein and pretty much all sides of the political spectrum calling BS, with guards conveniently disappearing and cameras conveniently malfunctioning when the deed took place, and so many other things that just don't add up, well, in this case, like in every other, you better not think too much. Thinking for yourself, it's dangerous. Try and think out of the box on social media and you could end up like our friend, whose name cannot even be said lest you lose your own social media in this war of information. Thinking for yourself now is so dangerous that the FBI are getting involved. A recent FBI intelligence bulletin has been released to much of the usual hype found in the controlled media. Sensational headlines linking President Trump to conspiracy theories and how now conspiracy theories should be considered domestic terrorism threats. Trying to tie all motivation to ideology seems to be the brush with which the FBI paints most of its suspects with, without considering for the slightest amount of time that people who commit random acts of violence are most likely suffering from mental health issues. Either way, this article from the FBI is now being used as proof by much of the corporate mainstream media, that YouTube, incidentally, is now pushing as authoritative, that so-called conspiracy theories are driving people to terrorism. Pizzagate, satanic temples, Zionist occupation government, QAnon, HARP, the New World Order, are all referenced in 9 separate cases that ranged from 2012 to 2018 in this authoritative document as it's being touted by the media. Now, I don't expect the media to do their job. I would just like to point out, however, that in the appendix in this paper, Wikipedia, Snoops, and the New York Times are all cited as sources, along with a lot of other online news outlets. Either way, by labeling everything that falls into wrongthink as a conspiracy theory, government, mainstream media, and most of all social media is attempting to shut down any and all avenues of information that they believe to be subversive. Now, while most likely the majority, if not the vast majority, of what are the more outlandish conspiracy theories, such as the flat earth hypothesis, are demonstrably false, that doesn't mean that everything labeled as a conspiracy is that, a conspiracy theory. For example, the government was stealing body parts of dead people without the consent of their family and using them in nuclear testing. The government did investigate UFOs. Edith Wilson, wife of Woodrow Wilson, was making most executive decisions when her husband had a stroke toward the end of his presidency. The CIA tested LSD and other hallucinogenic drugs on Americans in a top-secret experiment on behavior modification. The program was known as MK Ultra, and it was real. The Dalai Lama was on the payroll of the CIA and was an asset. American scientists did attempt to militarize the weather. The government is spying on you. The Gulf of Tonkin incident never happened. There were no babies torn from incubators and thrown on the floor of hospitals in Kuwait, and there were no weapons of mass destruction. All of these and countless others were for a time considered conspiracy theories, only to be believed by the mentally deficient inhabiting the fringes of society. All of these were conspiracy theories till they weren't. Big tech and social media have now de facto control over the information spigot. Insiders have exposed Google over and over and over again as a hyper-partisan organization that will not tolerate wrongthink. In fact, they will not tolerate what they consider wrongthink even within the electorate. Whether that electorate be in Ireland or the United States, it doesn't matter. They will not allow for wrongthink in any way, shape, or form. Recently, Dr. Robert Epstein, a psychologist who founded the Cambridge Center for Behavioral Studies and a very strong public supporter of Hillary Clinton, discussed his research before a subcommittee of the Senate Judiciary Committee and raised concerns on how Google manipulated voters to their preferred candidate in 2016. He believed that they swayed at rock bottom a minimum of 2.6 million votes to Clinton. Now, Google is, according to other whistleblowers, preparing to go all out to help defeat President Trump in 2020.
What you are testifying to is that a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires and giant corporations are able to spend millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars collectively, massively influencing the results of elections. And there's no accountability. You said we don't know. We have no way of knowing if Google or Facebook or Twitter sends it to Democrats or Republicans or how they bias it because it's a black box with no transparency or accountability whatsoever. Am I understanding you correctly?
Senator, with respect, I must correct you.
Please.
If Mark Zuckerberg chooses to send out a go vote reminder just to Democrats on Election Day, that doesn't cost him a dime.
Fair enough. Do you happen to know who the Hillary Clinton campaign's #1 financial supporter was in the year 2016?
I think I do, but please remind me.
The #1 financial supporter of the Hillary Clinton campaign in the 2016 election was the parent company of Google, Alphabet, who was our first witness. They were her #1 financial donor, and your testimony is, through their deceptive search methods, they moved 2.6 million votes in her direction. I would think anybody, whether or not you favor one candidate or another, should be deeply dismayed about a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires having that much power over our elections to silently and deceptively shift vote outcomes.
Again, with respect, I must correct you. The 2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million, depending on how aggressively they used the techniques that I've been studying now for 6.5 years.
Wow. Could you say that again, please? Just
The 2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes, depending on how aggressive they were in using the techniques that I've been studying, such as the search engine manipulation effect, the search suggestion effect, the answer bot effect, and a number of others. They control these, and no one can counteract them. These are not competitive. These are tools that they have at their disposal exclusively.
On the second most search platform in the world, YouTube, which is also owned by Google, insiders have also exposed the rampant, systematic, and overwhelming use of algorithms and even human intervention to suppress information and creators they deem to have wrongthink. All of that said, wrongthink, as Silicon Valley imagines it, will not be tolerated on YouTube, and wrongthink was the pretext for a whole new wave of censorship, along with what they call boosting the voices of authoritative media, which, according to Google, means the corporate mainstream media. And get this, they're also now adding links to Wikipedia in what they call controversial videos. Now, this is the same authoritative media that has for several years now been pushing the fake news of Russian collusion and interference in the 2016 presidential election. Now, you can actually do this yourself. On channels like this, if you have autoplay engaged, and I really suggest you don't, but if you do, you will most likely not get another video from this channel or from channels like it. What you're going to get is most likely a video from the mainstream media. And this is another way in which uncomfortable truths, political realities, and heretical information that they are intent on suppressing is done. And now, yet again, another whistleblower has come forward with information that, in response to a mainstream media talking head, yet again, they are now suppressing all independent creators and voices on the topic of, drumroll, the Federal Reserve. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, hey, 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 oh yeah. Originally, this video here, with over 1 million views, was the first video visible when the Federal Reserve was searched for. But since YouTube now sees any questioning, and in fact education on what the Fed is or what it does as controversial, it has labeled anything to do with questioning the Fed as, get ready for it, conspiracy theories. And if they're conspiracy theories, it must be suppressed. So after manually curating the algorithm when previously a mix of videos on the Federal Reserve would be offered to those searching, now only this. Mainstream media news items, one after another, from the usual MSNBC, CNN, Yahoo, and the other usual suspects. A lot of people say that truth does not fear investigation, but we all know that it does. Both Google and YouTube are using their power over the flow of information to now not only suppress information on the workings of institutions, but are guilty of attempting to hijack and skew our very society. They believe that they can manipulate our morality, and for many, this is just downright insulting at this point. Silicon Valley is totally out of control and is a bigger menace to freedom of speech and conscience than big government ever was. Big tech and social media need to lose their status as platforms and the legal protection that comes with it and be labeled the publishers that they are. Big tech is one of the largest threats to free societies that has ever existed, and they cannot and should not be allowed to try and dictate our morals, our values, and decide our very elections. Silicon Valley has declared war on at least half the population of the United States and a fair amount of the rest of the world. And as the 2020 presidential race really begins to heat up, I'm sure that they will be letting a lot more people know that they've had a little bit too much to think when they start their mass purges of accounts across all of the various platforms. It is coming.